There was once a proposed hypothesis that all it takes to reduce the sanest man alive to lunacy is one bad day, though the vagueness on the definition of a bad day varies from person to person, especially for the sorcerers of Jujutsu Kaisen, as one of the key factors in the practitioner of being a Jujutsu sorcerer is to already be a little crazy in order to deal with the results of curses. Though, what if it wasn't the curses that drove someone to their breaking point, but the cruelty of their creator? This is the story of the fall of one of Jujutsu High's greatest sorcerers, the brazen black-hearted Buddha, Suguru Geto.
Change my makeup.
What did you say?
Later. Cock.
Now, this video contains spoilers for Jujutsu Kaisen up to the most recent arc in the manga as of this video's release. So if you want to avoid spoilers, you've been warned. Suguru Geto is one of the major antagonists for the story of Jujutsu Kaisen, specifically fulfilling the role in the prequel story of Jujutsu Kaisen 0. But before all that, Geto was one of Gojo's closest friends, along with being one of the 4 special grade curse users to come from the Sorcerer Academy. And in his youth, he fully believed in the notion of the strong should protect the weak, and that curse energy was designed for that very purpose, though during his time at the Academy, his perspective would radically change, spawning the man who would inherit the title of the worst of all curse users. But before we get too into that, let's first understand the meaning behind his name and design. Starting first with his name, Suguru Geto, which is actually a rather weird or uncommon name in Japan, seemingly chosen by Gigi so that Geto would have a unique identity to him. Now, the influence behind his name is actually rather neat. Starting first with his family name, Geto, which doesn't actually mean anything specific at first, being comprised of the characters for summer and oil, but it actually draws from a location in a prefecture which Gigi grew up in, the Iwate prefecture, with the Geto Onsen in Kitakami, which is a Japanese-style inn, specifically with a hot spring bathing facility. And with that context, the term summer oil makes a little more sense, as the Geto in the name refers to the spring's own water, as its heat during the heavy winters are like the oils of summer, that help keep people warm, which is likely in reference to Geto's old worldview of him being naturally chosen by the world to protect people from the harshness of that world. Following this, we have his given name, Suguru, which is comprised of the characters for superior being or excellence. Essentially, it's a name that would come to fit his later worldview, as due to his curse ability, Geto viewed himself as superior to regular humans, which originally instilled a somewhat protector mentality in him, but would eventually twist into a god complex-like view. And the foundation of this god complex comes partly from his own innate curse technique, this being curse spirit manipulation, which allows Geto to freely manipulate or control curse spirits that he defeats and then consumes, which is different than the average Shikigami user, as Geto can take any kind of curse spirit and add it to his arsenal, and the level of the curse spirit itself determines the amount of effort needed to add them to his collection. Example being, at his special grade status, only third-rate or lower spirits can be freely controlled without any requirements. Anything higher requires him to defeat and consume it. Honestly, a good way to wrap your head around Geto's ability is to imagine him as an SMT protagonist, where he can capture a demon, deploy it, and control a certain amount at a time, and his personal level dictates the level of summonable allies that he can get. Now, the way Geto is able to capture these spirits is that he reduces them to pure energy orbs that he can then consume, making their energy part of his own. And Geto has actually been able to capture quite a few spirits in his time of being a spirit manipulator. So I wanted to go through and point out the more famous curses in his possession, starting first with one of his strongest cursed spirits at the time of his enrollment at the Sorcerer Academy, this being the powerful Rainbow Dragon, or Hung of Asian mythos, which is a name that doesn't sound exactly threatening at first, but is actually tied together with disaster and bad omens, as unlike auspicious dragons such as Lung, who brought warnings of oncoming disasters, Hung would appear only after a rainstorm had occurred, with some philosophers at the time saying he was a sign of the god's disapproval. Thus, with fear and contempt focused at the creature, a cursed spirit was spawned into existence, and the design itself draws a lot from Eastern dragons in its shape, with its long snake or serpent-like body and antler-esque horns on its head. Also, it's commented on done by Geto for having very hard skin or scales, which isn't something I could find inherently tied to Hung, but is likely just a property of most dragon-like spirits. Also, a strange difference between the Hung of Mythos and Geto's cursed spirit is Hung is claimed to have 2 heads, one on both ends of its body, but the spirit itself in Jujutsu Kaisen is a singular-headed dragon. Next, we see him utilize a cursed spirit generated from an urban legend, this being the Kuchisaki Onna, or the Slit-Mouth Woman, which is a vengeful spirit of a mutilated woman. How she was mutilated varies from generation to generation, but one of the oldest variations of the story describes the beautiful wife of a samurai, who was caught committing adultery, and was punished by her husband by having her face deformed, slashing a smile into it from ear to ear. And now they wander the streets late at night wearing a mask over their scarred face. Now, how the curse works is the woman will approach a person late at night and then ask them if she's beautiful, and your answer would dictate your future. Tell her no and she kills you on the spot, but if you answer yes, she will then reveal her scarred face and ask you again. If you show any signs of fear or reject her true face, a massive pair of scissors will sever you in half, killing you on the spot. Though if you answer yes, she will then scar your face in the same way. A smile ear to ear, which is survivable, but permanently damaging. There are a few ways to survive this encounter. First off, if you tell her that you're busy, she will ignore you for now, though it is possible she will return to you in the future. Some also say lying on the second question will allow you to escape as well, but this safety is only momentary, as while you are sleeping, the spirit will creep in and cut you up at night. Though there is one way to get out of this. If you distract her with money or sweets, or answer her with a half-hearted response like average or not my type, then she won't know how to react, giving you time to escape or dispelling her altogether. Then we finally reach Geto post his breakdown, when he has had time to collect stronger and stronger cursed spirits, collecting one of the only natural 16 special grade spirits at the time actually, and number 2 on the list of the most evil spirits in all of Japan, Tamamo no Mai, which is a legendary fox spirit whose history is combined together with many different legends from many different cultures of a similar spirit as well, known best as the nine-tailed fox, who siphons life from rulers and causes chaos in their territory, using her magical ability to curse those who oppose her and talk her way out of most situations. Though in the universe of Jujutsu Kaisen, we don't actually know what her abilities are. And while these 3 aren't his only cursed spirits, they are the only 3 that are actually named. But given the nature of his curse ability, we actually see him use quite a few throughout the story. From a flying stingray, to little mushroom men, a dune worm, and most interestingly enough, copying Toji's idea of the portable stomach to store weapons in, and he uses it to store his collection of rare cursed items as well, such as the Playful Cloud, which is actually a tool that he is pretty efficient with. As well, his curse technique and fighting style may not immediately tell you such, Geto himself is an expert in hand-to-hand combat as well, being able to overwhelm and defeat Panda without much issue, and with the Playful Cloud he was able to parry Yuta's sword strikes alongside blocking Rika's physical blows, without showing much fatigue at all. Honestly, in his prime, you'd need to surprise attack him to win a close quarters fight with Geto. But his most impressive feat of all comes from the total mastery of his innate curse technique, this being Maximum Uzumaki. Maximum Uzumaki is the strongest technique in the curse manipulation field, where the user combines a massive number of collected cursed spirits into one powerful attack, with the bodies of the cursed spirits being twisted and bent into a massive spiral shape that hovers above the user, that is then fired like a pneumatic spike. There also doesn't seem to be a maximum limit of cursed spirits that you can use in a single Uzumaki, with Geto using nearly 4,500 curses altogether when he used this ability, which, according to Gigi, if Geto had used all the curses that he had before the parade of 100 demons, then Uzumaki would have been powerful enough to actually overwhelm Yuta and Rika's own attack, which is honestly saying something given how much of a glow-up Rika was given. Though one aspect of Uzumaki that Geto didn't realize, and what makes it a maximum technique, is that all semi-first grade or higher curses used in an Uzumaki have their innate curse technique inherited by the user. This is sort of a trade-off for the cost of destroying one's surplus of cursed spirits. Now, the technique's name and design are directly in reference to the famous Junji Ito story of the same name, Uzumaki, which, in simple terms, is a story about a supernatural force which is tied to the shape of a spiral pattern that would drive those who obsess over it mad. Similar to this, Once Geto learned the truth of his world, he began to question his own sanity, and this questioning of his worldview came about during his second year at the Sorcerer's Academy. As back then, Geto fully believed that sorcerers were meant to protect non-sorcerers, in a sense, saviors of the weak, and his belief was strong enough that he'd be even willing to fight to prove it. Though, in being assigned to a mission to protect the Star Plasma Vessel, Geto got to witness the true cruelty of humanity on display, as a cult of non-curse users who worshipped Master Tengen and wished to see his purity upheld, hired Toji Fushiguro, the sorcerer killer, to take her out and deliver her body to them, which he succeeded in spectacularly, because Toji is the coolest fucking character in the entirety of Jujutsu Kaisen. But anyways, the Star Plasma Vessel is killed right before Geto's eyes, shot in the head suddenly after he had just finished saving her from her own fate. And then to learn that the people who called for her head would never be brought to justice had Geto questioning his own perspective. These non-curse users that got to toy with the lives of sorcerers because of their own ignorance on how the world worked, either spawning powerful curses into the world due to their lack to keep their own curse energy under control, as sorcerers do not create curse spirits, or cultists who knew what they were doing but still actively killed those whose only crime was being born. On top of all of this, one of the side effects that comes with being a curse manipulator is in the consumption of spirits itself, as one must willingly consume a rancid orb with the taste and texture of a rag used to mop up vomit. A truly awful experience, but he put up with it because he believed he was helping the helpless by doing so. But now when he did it, he would see flashes of those cultists, the ones who killed and applauded his friend's death, the ones who got off scot-free. Though his final breaking point came when he was assigned to a mission in a small village. He was asked to exterminate some curses up there that had been causing the people trouble, and when they brought him to the perceived source of the trouble, all he saw was two scared little girls, savagely beaten and locked inside a cage. The villagers did this to them because of their curse abilities, and no matter how much they protested, the girls were just silenced. But due to the rule that no sorcerer can willingly create a curse, these girls were entirely innocent, and Geto knew this. Seeing again the cruelty of humanity on full display, Geto finally broke. He viewed non-sorcerers on the same level of animals, and thus he slaughtered the whole village as such, freeing the little girls in the process and then adopting them. From here, he had decided that he would change the world for the benefit of curse users, as he wanted to forge one inhabited only by sorcerers, and that way people would never need to worry about cursed spirits ever again. And after one final encounter with his former classmates, he would work to fund this goal, forming a family of curse users and taking up the head position on the cult that retroactively caused his enlightenment, in order to extort money and curses from them due to their underground connections, and even killing those who had caused suffering for curse users without remorse. And if this sounds similar, it's because it is, as Geto's character is actually heavily inspired by Yu Yu Hakusho's own Black Angel, Shinobu Sensui, who, like Geto, was a gifted youth with incredible power, unmatched in his field, but on one mission he saw the true cruelty of mankind, with Sensui witnessing the feast of human vices, resulting in him slaughtering everything in the room, Sensui not even registering them as human at the time, and his hatred of people only grew as he willingly partook in the viewing of Chapter Black, a videotape containing all of humanity's greatest evils. Sensui even sort of formed a family similar to Geto's own, though the difference being, instead of showing his family Chapter Black, Geto's family more experienced the contents of Chapter Black. And honestly, the Parade of 100 Demons in the opening of the Spirit Gates are very visually similar. And the similarities even come down to how the characters are shown visually and how they view themselves, with Sensui becoming this sort of holy figure, with his aura being even referred to as Holy Aura and glowing with a angelic gold. He was even nicknamed the Black Angel. He clearly is supposed to be a play on the Lucifer analogy, where Geto is given his Buddhist robes, his enlightened status, and his symbolic imagery is clearly supposed to be a twist on the Buddha, though they both do share a similar fate, defeated in a final blaze of glory. Though in his last moments he would have a final exchange with his former best friend, Satoru Gojo, who, out of respect for him, doesn't have Geto's body destroyed after his death. But this would go on to be one of Gojo's greatest mistakes, as in doing so, he allowed the body-hopping evil brain, Kenjuku, to take over Geto's deceased body and began to plan his revolutionary ideas for the world of curse energy. And even though he's been long since dead, aspects of Geto's will still exist within his body, as some coaxing from Gojo momentarily caused Geto's body to move on its own again, resulting in Kenjuku to claim that it's possible that the body and soul are one and the same, which leads me to some speculation about Geto's possible future in this series, because as it stands right now, he's dead. But there are still two unsolved mysteries about him. First being his will still existing within his body, and how much that will play a role later in the story. As Gigi has mentioned, it was more of his body acting as a natural response to Gojo's words, but it's possible that there's more to it. But also, we still don't know what Gojo said to Geto in their final interaction. Its text box is completely blanked out, and judging by Geto's response, it appears to be something surprising, but not cruel. Now, could what he said be tied to how Gojo was able to wake Geto's body up? Maybe. I mean, the two of them were pretty close, so it's hard to say. Also, one segment of the Gojo backstory that really stood out to me in comparison to the rest was that Geto and Gojo seemed like they were completely willing to take on Master Tengen if push came to shove. And with Tengen being revealed as the next goal of Kenjuku, maybe they'll be able to fulfill that task. Either way, Geto is one of the coolest characters in Jujutsu Kaisen, as he's a very well-handled antagonist. Not only do we get to see his fall from grace and foundation of ideas, but we also get to see his humanity, ironically, as he truly loves his new family, and treats them all with utmost kindness and respect, willing to even break his serious persona from time to time, and go out into the world just to please them. And we even see him cry tears of joy when he witnesses a microcosm of his future world. I just hope that we'll be able to see more of him in one way or another in the future. And with that all said and done, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see more videos like it in the future, I have a Patreon at patreon.com/MediNotTheBadGuy. Every little bit helps keep this channel flowing as smoothly as it does. And if you want to awaken to your own cursed potential and not be wiped out in Geto's New World Order, well, you can do so by buying a copy of Shimonetta, A Boring World with the Concept of Dirty Jokes Doesn't Exist at buyshimonetta.com.